Quite a crew in this morning. We welcome everybody joining us this morning, and we'll start with Jill Foyce, the Executive Director of the Northwest Commission. Good morning, Jill. Good to see you.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Deb Eckelberger's here from the Titusville Community Development Agencies. Deb, hello.
Good morning, Luke. How are you, Mark, today?
Wonderful, thank you. And we have Dan Manning joining us from Connected Nation. He is the Community Technology Advisor. Good morning, Dan.
Good morning, Luke. How are you today?
Good. And how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Good to be with you this morning.
All right. Well, what is going on? Jill, let's start with you.
Sure. The Northwest Commission was the recipient of a grant to look at broadband in our 8 counties. The grant was through the Appalachian Regional Commission as part of the Power Initiative, and the Power Initiative was to look at how to assist coal-impacted communities impacted by the downturn in the coal industry. So we had a lot of different municipalities and counties looking at broadband. What is their capacity? What can they do? This is really an opportunity for us to look at all the assets that exist and the gaps that exist, and really look at how do we change our economy in our 8 counties? How do we look toward the future? How do we bring industry, more industries, new industries into the region? We know that with a strong broadband network, we can have some very high-tech businesses in our area where we wouldn't have had that opportunity before.
And before we get to Dan and what his role is in all this, Deb, what does this mean for those businesses looking to maybe bring business here to the region?
Well, strong internet service or broadband service is so important. We hear businesses talk to us often about they need large plans emailed to them for design or for equipment, and that bogs down their system. Or they'd like to do government contracting, but
or send cat pictures.
Yeah, there you go. Whatever works. They'd like to do government contracting, but their system gets bogged down by all the emails that come in, and they're not capable of connecting quick enough to respond to that. And things like that we hear from them, and this is a way for us to boost that. Also school districts, things like that. You know, the students, they're home and they don't have the opportunity to have internet service at home, so they have to do their work at school. So it just helps both residents and businesses both. So this is the focus of this project, to help everyone overall in the areas that the Northwest Commission services.
Dan, what does Connected Nation have to do with this entire idea or concept of bringing broadband to the region?
Yeah, sure. Let me give you a little bit of background. Connected Nation is a national nonprofit organization really focused on helping expand the access, adoption, and use of broadband across the country. We've been in place for about the last 10 or 12 years. Worked pretty closely with the Federal Communications Commission. They're the ones that really set a lot of the targets and strategies in terms of how broadband is going to be rolled out across the country and how we can get some needed funds to the right organizations to be able to deploy broadband in certain places where it's really needed. So again, we've been in place for about the last 10 or 12 years. We've also got a number of state-related organizations that are like offshoots of Connected Nation. So there's a Connect Michigan, a Connect Ohio, Connect Nevada. There's about 8 or 10 states that have got state-level organizations doing the same thing. So we're really all about understanding at a grassroots level what's going on in the local communities, working with them, helping them understand who their providers are, what their current coverage is, where the need is, what kind of things they can do to help make things better overall.
So what kind of challenges do you guys face when you come into a situation like this? What are some of the things you look for?
Well, yeah, it can be pretty challenging. Certainly, we find a lot of the more rural areas are having more and more difficulty getting the broadband service that they need in order to attract the businesses and residents like Jill was talking about earlier. So a lot of that has to do with really taking an inventory of what the current situation is, and that's really the role that we're playing here in working with the Northwest Commission, is to come out and do an assessment of what the current landscape looks like in terms of broadband coverage, understand where those rural areas are, who really has the need for broadband, and what are the barriers that are preventing some of the broadband providers from coming in and expanding their networks into those areas.
Jill, that sounds like you need to gather a lot of information. So how do you begin that process?
Well, we had our kickoff with Connected Nation on June 4th. We had a kickoff meeting, and I was really excited to see that all 8 of our counties were represented. We had county commissioners, we had economic development people, we had healthcare institutions, universities. So there was a wide breadth of people that are interested in it and bringing the message out. So what we need to do is gather all of that information, find out who has broadband, who has access to internet, who has no access at all. And that's a bit of a challenge to survey those about broadband who don't have broadband.
I was just talking to a guy on the phone yesterday, and he dropped out because he hit a dead spot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's those situations around here.
And it absolutely exists. So we're working primarily with our partners to get the word out and use hard copy, paper and pencil to connect primarily with our libraries, because we know a lot of people are going to the library to use their internet service. So those are the people that we're trying to tap into, those residents that we get the information. Where do you live? What is your level of coverage, if any coverage at all? So we are using all of our partners, all of our friends, and that's why we're here today, to make sure that everyone knows about the survey that was kicked off on the 4th and will carry through the beginning of August to find out, what is the capacity, where are the gaps, what is it that people need. We're looking at all kinds of different areas: healthcare, agriculture, K through 12, higher education, residents, anyone who can get that information back to us so we can gather all of that and then look at how do we move forward in a comprehensive way.
Dan, is that a good challenge for you guys when you have such a diverse group of people who, I mean, who doesn't use some sort of an internet connection or broadband today? You're talking telemedicine. You're talking about universities. We have a lot of universities around here that could do a lot more if they had that infrastructure in place. I know people in agriculture who are using drones now, and they need that connection to to send video to the farmer down the road or whatever. It's got to be quite a challenge because you're not talking about just one industry.
That's exactly right. It's really become pretty essential for all industries, all sectors, in order to make all this work. So as Jill indicated also, one of the first things that we did at our kickoff meeting was to get people on board to attend that meeting to represent these various sectors. So we had folks there from local governments, from economic development, from the schools, from healthcare organizations, and so on, to give them a voice into all this as well, so they understand or they can communicate what their specific needs are within their given sector. So with them being represented at the table, we're now leveraging them to be able to get out to their peer constituents and get the word out about these surveys that we're putting together in order to collect the data that we need to find out specifically what those needs are.
Deb, there's a lot of businesses that are more open to allowing folks to work at home or away from the office. I would imagine this would open the door up to maybe at least marketing that a lot more to folks or to businesses.
Absolutely. You want to have that, I guess, more and more employees today like that balance of work and home together, and that's a good opportunity to do that, and that keeps your good employees there. It builds that good working relationship, and we all know workforce is their number one challenge, so it's a way to help smooth through that by using technology and having that available to us here in rural Western PA.
Yeah. Jill, do you find that where companies maybe 10 years ago didn't really like that concept, but now as technology gets better, that and productivity probably has increased a little bit when you give that flexibility to somebody. Have you talked to businesses who have said, yeah, this is great, we could do more of that if that infrastructure was in place?
Absolutely. It's all about talent retention. It's all about keeping those great employees that Deb talked about in place. You have to have the flexibility. If we want to engage our young people and if we want to keep them in our rural area, we have to give them the advantages that they would have in other areas. So anytime you can give them the flexibility to work from home and be productive there and cut down on drive time, which we know can be huge in our area, it does make them more productive and it does allow them to tap in. I know I'm doing more work from home than I ever have. It's a blessing and a curse sometimes at 10 o'clock at night, but it does give that flexibility. It allows our young professionals and our more mature professionals the opportunity to stay connected, stay at home, and still be productive.
Let me ask a question that's going to sound probably pretty naive. I mean, if you go out shopping for a cell phone and you look at the coverage maps at different places, you'll see, the white areas where geographically maybe it's the geography that doesn't allow for certain kinds of coverage and signal and what have you, and you kind of, or I kind of take that as a given. You just know that in some areas like radio, there's going to be a dead area that you just can't get to. With the prevalence of devices and phones and computers and what have you, the idea of a broadband divide or an internet divide, like has been talked about for any number of years, for a lot of folks almost is a non-issue, and it seems like that's really not the case, because so many folks seem to have access to internet. But this is kind of a much deeper issue, where perhaps it's the availability, and I didn't consider that availability of broadband was much of an issue anymore. Have you run into that?
There are places that are still not covered at all. Sometimes it's just, and Dan can speak to the technical piece of that more than I can, but it's it's the uploads and the downloads. It's, to Deb's point, if you're running one application, it's slowing down the system that you can't use another. It's looking at our healthcare system where we're able to send large groups of data off to a larger hospital to get quicker diagnosis and those types of things. So sometimes it's not the availability of it, but it's the level of availability. It's making sure that they have ample and adequate availability to do what those things that we may not be able to take advantage of.
So
in
the
rural
pipeline infrastructure, if you will, is what needs to be enlarged.
Well, Jill teed it up for Dan. We'll ask him in a second. 8:21 is our time. This is the Morning Drill on Stream Television, Armstrong, and the Allegheny News Talk Sports Network. So, Dan, there's the question. Is it, because I'm sure the needs vary, how do you determine what size pipe you need in an area?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's all dependent both on having access, being able to get access to broadband in some fashion, but also what technology is being used to deliver that internet service to you. So there's a number of different technologies out there. So there's cable, there's DSL, which is internet being delivered through the old phone lines. There's what they call fixed wireless technology, which is transmitting signals from the towers, which is real helpful to get out into the more rural areas and those areas that are hard to reach by a fixed cable of any type. There's also satellite service, which is available pretty much everywhere, though it tends to be a little expensive and doesn't deliver the kind of bandwidth that we're really looking for. So, and on top of that, the mobile broadband, being able to access the internet through your phone, which is dependent on the towers of the individual providers as well. So again, depending on the demand and the need, whether it's a business or an individual, and the types of files and volume that's going across those connections, there's different type of technologies that are better for each one of them. So our challenge is really to understand where the needs are and what those specific needs can be and what technology fits them best, and then to work with the appropriate providers to figure out a way to how to deliver that technology to that given residence or that business to make it all work.
I just saw a story yesterday that said like YouTube just passed like 13.5 billion viewing hours or something like that. Incredible. But there's a case where, I'm sure a lot of it's fun, a lot of it's entertainment, but a lot of people looking for information on there. And Deb, as you were saying, companies are looking to send large files back and forth, to have that availability to them. What would it take to get this implemented, or what's the next step after the survey? And Jill, where can people find the survey to fill out?
Well, the easiest way is to look on our website, which is northwestpa.org. But the actual connection to the survey is connectmycommunity.org/Northwest-Pennsylvania.
Okay, so that's where they can go to get that, and maybe we can post that later.
That would be
so
great.
people
Thank
can
you.
get to that. And then how much time is taken to take a look at all that data and then figure out what's next?
Well, our hope
Well,
is to...
Go ahead, Jill.
Oh, I'm sorry. Our hope is to have our study completed and then look at some of the opportunities. The Economic Development Administration just received more funding. It's no longer called POWER. It's now called Assistance to Coal Communities. So there are funding sources out there that we can tap into, but this is kind of the egg before the chicken. You have to have that information. You have to be able to provide statistics and data that says that this is what we need and how we need it. So there are funds available. Getting back to your point about gaps in service and when you're traveling down the road, you may or may not have service for a while. A lot of times we just don't have the return on investment that would attract private investment, so we have to look at other sources. EDA, the Economic Development Administration, ARC, the Appalachian Regional Commission, USDA, the Department of Ag. They have programs. It's just having the match required to tap into those funds, but having the information that allows us to move an application forward.
Dan, did you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, as we go through this process here, gathering data through our surveys that we'll be doing over the next couple of months, our Connected Nation team will be taking the results of that and doing some analysis on it and coming up with some key findings that's very specific to Northwest Pennsylvania. And we'll come back with a set of recommendations on what kind of actions can be taken to help improve the broadband situation and maybe take advantage of some of the other successes that have happened in other communities that we've worked with across the country that might make sense to do in Northwest Pennsylvania as well.
Dan, is it a challenge when you have communities 20 miles apart?
It can be at times, but again, we've had good representation from all the 8 counties in this particular case to bring them all together. It's a very popular topic, as you'd certainly guess. Yeah. A lot of residents as well as businesses certainly have these issues that they want to get resolved. So we've also seen a lot of good response to our surveys as a result of that. I think at this point we've got nearly 500 residential surveys responded to just in the first couple of weeks that we've launched this thing. So that tells you the level of interest that's out there. And we want to keep driving those numbers as high as we can, so we got a real good picture of what's going on across the county.
Has it been mostly business and industry or private sector?
It's really a mix. We've had about 500 residential surveys. We've probably had close to 100 businesses as well respond, and then we've got individual surveys for the specific sectors, whether it's agriculture or government or healthcare organizations. We have a separate survey for the libraries that was mentioned earlier, since they really become a hub for internet service for a lot of the local communities.
Deb, this is a topic we've obviously talked about quite a bit with the Taking Care of Business segment and having businesses on and what their needs are. So for you guys, how does this work in your future plans with economic development?
Well, first of all, I've been sending this out to the library. Justin said, yes, 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 is how he responded to that. The school district is going to be sending it out. It's going to go in the utility bills here in the city, so we put it out to the utility bills. Programs like this help it. I think just getting the word out and letting people know that we are sometimes considered the backwoods people here. We don't have all the things that they might have in a major metropolitan area, but we really do. We have businesses like BSI that are totally internet-based, focused right here in our community, and getting that word out and letting people know that that business opportunity is here, and to either expand your business and have more of an internet broadband presence, or bring your broadband business or internet business here. We welcome that, and this information will help us to be more successful in doing that.
Jill, you must see a lot of people come into the office with business plans. How much of those plans rely on reliable internet?
All of them.
All of them.
Absolutely, yeah.
At some level, every business has to be connected. It can be as simple as their voice over IP phone lines to complete internet-based businesses and everything in between.
It's amazing. We're doing some upgrades here, and everything that we're doing is IP-based. Mm-hmm. So analog, TV, radio, everything is changing. Dan, for you, I'd imagine that keeps you pretty busy.
Absolutely it does. There's lots of activity. We've probably done over 200 engagements like this with communities across the country. in the number of states that I had mentioned earlier, and there continues to be more and more demand. Even though the coverage is increasing over time, as more and more providers come on board and extend their networks, there's still, that 10 or 15% of folks out there that are having trouble getting access, or at least getting the speeds that they need in order to make all this work. So it keeps us very busy, and the demand keeps changing as well. There were some references earlier about, how much data is being sent up and down the pipe and all that, but as with the advent of applications like extended video and Netflix and watching movies and things like that, that just puts more and more load on the on the internet backbone. So lots of demand that's driving a lot of this at the same time that people are looking for access to begin with.
All righty, guys, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Deb, final comment?
Well, might want to mention how Dan got to be here today. That might be cool to comment on.
He's in the other room. We have
No, he's not. He got Skyped in
Yeah,
today,
Dan
so that
Skyped
proves
in.
it. Yes.
So, Dan, where are you right now?
Actually, I'm in my home office in Brighton, Michigan. So
Wow.
this is being able to leverage a technology like this is exactly the kind of stuff we're trying to deliver to residents and businesses all over the country.
Very nice. Well, Dan, while we have you on here, final comment.
I think this is great. We're really excited about working with Northwest Pennsylvania in order to bring this project to fruition. I'd just like to reemphasize again the link that we'd like everybody to take the survey if they would, this connectmycommunity.org/Northwest-Pennsylvania. You can go to that one page, and there's a listing of different types of surveys that are available, whether you're a local resident, local business, or a member of any of the individual sectors that we mentioned there. So I'd encourage all your listeners and viewers to please go in and help us take the survey.
Excellent. Thank you, Dan. Jill, how about you? Final comment.
Couldn't have said it better. The survey is the key. It's our first step. We appreciate opportunities like this that you have given us to get the word out and share it with your neighbors and your friends and make sure that the survey gets done and your voice is heard.
Great. You guys come back and update us on what's going on?
Absolutely.
That'd be wonderful. Thanks. Dan, thank you. Deb, thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Jill, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jill and Deb.
Thanks, Dan.